Just months after this Dean's List student was on homecoming court, her young life was cut short when she was gunned down on campus just outside of the dorms.
I mean, anybody get in anywhere. These university campuses are open to anybody. It's not like there's a guard gate waving people through, or these are adults. So it's just sad and unfortunate.
Investigators now say the shooter responsible for the brutal crime is the victim's ex-boyfriend, who she parted ways with in a messy breakup.
Domestic violence is a big driver of people who kill with guns, firearms. There's statistics on that.
So what's next for the accused killer?
So in Georgia, any conviction of any type of murder, malice murder, felony murder, always carries life in prison.
And where will the investigation go from here?
It just all depends on where the evidence takes you.
It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when a secure-in-place alert was put out on the Kennesaw State University campus. It's a mid-sized college in Kennesaw, Georgia, about an hour north of Atlanta. On Saturday, May 18th, students there got the alert that an intruder was on campus.
Well, unfortunately, like most states in our country, guns are very easy to get. In Georgia, you don't really need anything other than a heartbeat. So I'm not shocked that somebody was killed with a gun. Just welcome to the United States. So obviously, domestic violence is a big driver of people who kill with guns, firearms. There's statistics on that. Listen, I own guns. I'm not anti-gun, but we don't do anything in this state to really do a deep dive on people.
Criminal defense lawyer Lawrence Zimmerman practices in Marietta, Georgia, just outside of Kennesaw. Generally, is this a safe area? I know that you said that obviously people could be gun enthusiasts or it's easy to have access to guns, but is this normally a safe area or college campus?
Yeah, it's normal. It's normally a safe area, but I guess my point that I'm trying to make is, today's day and age, there's a lot of safe areas where gun violence infiltrates. I mean, that's the scary thing. It's not like, we could just avoid certain areas anymore. It could happen anywhere.
The security alert on campus ended about an hour after it was put out, and with it came devastating news. A junior on her way to becoming a nurse practitioner had been shot and killed. Investigators identified the woman as 21-year-old Alasia Franklin. The 911 call was made by Alasia's friend, who woke up to the sound of gunshots and ran outside to find her on the ground. She was pronounced dead shortly after the 911 call came in. Authorities quickly determined Alasia had been shot 3 times by a Glock handgun, and it didn't take long for investigators to track down a suspect either. And if we're looking at the timeline, from the time that there was an alert on campus, it was a lockdown at about 4 p.m. It was finished by about 4:45, so she had already been shot. And then not long after, investigators had already tracked down the suspect. How were they able to do so quickly?
Well, obviously somebody knew something about this guy, or maybe someone I recognized him from before. We don't know. Maybe she called her parents, texted somebody that he was coming over. Who knows? But that's obviously how they got to him.
About 10 miles from the crime scene, investigators arrested Samuel Harris, Alasia's ex-boyfriend. According to her mother, Alasia had known Harris since middle school. The pair dated but recently broke up in December of last year. Alasia's mom says the breakup was not violent, but it was intense. Her father says he met Harris in the past, but never saw any red flags. And it sounds like this was a relationship that went sour. They broke up. It's been several months, almost 6 months at this point since all of that. And again, no real motive has been listed by authorities, but can we kind of connect the dots that it was likely something to do with the breakup or relationship?
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not in the business of speculation, right? You got to base it on the evidence, facts, but sounds like preliminary reports, sounds like something happened that maybe triggers a bad word to use, but was the catalyst for this incident, as far as we know.
We have to pause the tragic story of Alasia Franklin for a quick second to thank Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring today's Law and Crime news package. It's stories like this that remind you never know what's going to happen and that the world is an unpredictable place. So when you're hurt, it can be confusing, it can be scary, and you don't really know where to turn. Well, enter Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. You can submit a claim in 8 clicks or less on your phone and find out if you have a case. And if you do, your injury could be worth millions. In the past couple of months, they've gotten verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, and $6.8 million in New York. Also, they have over 1,000 lawyers, so you know you're in good hands. So if you're injured, you can start by easily submitting a claim at www.forthepeople.com/LCnews or by dialing #law. That's #529 on your phone. Now back to the story. And the victim in this case, Alasia Franklin, her mother has been outspoken about it and says that during the incident while her daughter was shot, there was an argument going on. So is it possible that investigators would then reach out to people nearby and say, hey, did you overhear anything? Were these people arguing? Things like that?
Sure. I mean, it's gonna be Kennesaw State Police. Not knocking them. They're not the Cobb County Police, which has a much uh, more manpower, and this is what they do every day. But Kennesaw State Police will obviously interview any witness that was there and involved. Probably get surveillance videos from the complex. They'll do a they'll search the area and they'll figure out what video cameras are around and they'll pull all that. They'll pull phone records, text messages, social media posts, social media messages. They'll do a deep dive into this case to figure out what transpired and then how we got to this point.
And the charges he faces now are murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. Do you think these are appropriate charges with what happened?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Are there any additional charges you think he could face as things go on, or will these ones likely stick?
Well, I mean, the district attorney can always charge more than what someone's arrested for. Once a grand jury hears it, look, they could choose to seek the death penalty in this case. It's death penalty eligible. I'm not saying they should. I'm against the death penalty, but they could seek it. And there's an election yesterday, and the current district attorney lost. So we'll have to wait and see what the new district attorney does when they come into office.
Zimmerman says if convicted, Harris could face the most severe punishment. So, as you said, this could be a death penalty case because we have murder on the table here. So, I know this is way down the line, but let's say that is the route that prosecutors want to go. What would that look like heading to trial? Would things be different? A death penalty eligible jury, things like that?
Sure, death penalty cases. I mean, all cases are all serious. Consequences in this are final, obviously. So in a death penalty case in Georgia, there's certain factors, aggravating factors that have to be met. I think laying in wait's one of them. If he was just waiting around for them, for her, and then he would have a death penalty case that has different procedures. It's streamlined appeals during the case before you ever get to trial. Yeah, so it's a little bit different. But you asked any other charges, I just mentioned it could be death penalty. Cobb County, don't see a lot of death penalty cases. There was one recently, last couple of years, the gentleman who killed the people on the golf course. And there's another one where sheriff's deputy was killed. It was all resolved, I believe, in pleas of life in prison. So the death penalty, they didn't go to trial.
So let's say death penalty is not an option, that's off the table. What are the other sentences that he could possibly face? Would it always be life in prison?
So in Georgia, any conviction of any type of murder, malice murder, felony murder, always carries life in prison without parole, except after 30 years. So, long time.
In terms of Harris's defense, Zimmerman says there are a lot of variables at work. And I reached out to you specifically because not only are you in the area, but you are a defense attorney. So let's say that you have to take on the defendant in this case, Samuel Harris. What sort of defense would you bring forward?
It's hard to say. I'd have to hear his story and what happened. And if, there's different variables, maybe it's on him. Maybe there's an alibi. Maybe it's misidentification. Maybe the gun went off accidentally. I don't know if there's multiple shots. Maybe he could claim self-defense. Maybe she attacked him. I'm not saying that happened. You're asking me variables. I'm just being hypothetical. I don't want to slander anybody. So, it just all depends on where the evidence takes you.
In the end, investigators still haven't released an official motive in the case. Do you think that this case is something that could have been prevented?
I don't know enough. I don't know how he got a firearm. I don't know his background. We always hope we can prevent violence. I don't know if the KSU needs to make their campus safer. I don't know how everything's set up as far as, anybody get in anywhere. These university campuses are open to anybody. It's not like there's a guard gate waving people through, or these are adults. So it's just sad and unfortunate. I don't know if this guy was acting up, if she could have got a protective order, if maybe she just thought he would never act on anything and blew it off. You know, I can't answer those questions. We don't know, but I'm happy to come back once we get more information and discuss it.
So, as you said, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. We're still in the early stages. This just happened over the weekend. Where do you expect the case to go, or what the next steps would be?
So the next steps will be he can have what's called preliminary hearing, or otherwise known as a probable cause hearing, and that's where the detective who took out the arrest warrant will testify as to the basis for that arrest warrant. They'll also have a bond hearing. This type of case, I would expect he'd probably be denied bond. That's how it'll start out. And let's say, here's what I say about every case. It's hard for me to look and has nothing against the media whatsoever. I've had a lot of cases that have been reported in the news where they don't always get all the facts right, and then I get involved in the case, peel back the layers. It's not exactly the way it was brought forth to the public, and that's not the media's fault. You're getting your reports from the police. So, and right now the reports are one-sided. Once a lawyer and his investigators, his or her investigators, start digging in, it's hard to say. It could be a straightforward murder case. It may not be. Maybe the guy's crazy. Maybe it's insanity defense. And there's just all different ways to look at it. So it's real hard sitting here, like I tell clients, to speculate upon speculation. We could be here for the next 3 hours talking about it.
Right now, Harris is being held without bond as he awaits a future hearing.
So when you're arrested, you have initial appearance, and there's a judge, and they'll read you the charges, and this charge will be denied bond at the initial appearance. That happens usually in 70 to 72 hours, because the magistrate doesn't have the authority to set bond in this kind of case, but even if they did, it still wouldn't get bond at the initial appearance on a murder charge. So then there's a court date scheduled for a bond hearing. Whomever he hires to represent him will file a motion for either a different date for a bond hearing along with a preliminary hearing, and that'll be scheduled anywhere. It depends on the court's calendar, between the next 2 to 4 weeks or whenever a lawyer decides they'll be ready.
A statement from Kennesaw State University President Kathy Swag reads in part, quote, "Our thoughts and deepest sympathies are with the victim's family and friends during this incredibly difficult time." She also noted Harris was not a student at KSU, and counselors are available on campus for those in need. For now, Harris is being held in the Cobb County Jail awaiting a bond hearing. He has not yet entered a plea in the case. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.